Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back. Welcome back to Hot Mic. The Hot Mic podcast is where divergent points of view debate and discuss hot topics. I'm Nathan Ivy, your host, and I want to welcome in my crew today. We've got Kevin Aldridge with us today. Of course, as always, we got Phil Heimlich, and we've got Fanon Rucker. Gentlemen, welcome back to Hot Mic. And how are you? How was your week?
Great week, great week. I just gotta say, man, look, with that promo, everybody got like these cool promo shots, like Fanon out there with the lightsaber. It's just kind of me with just kind of like the business look, man. Come on, man. Look, Nathan got the gestures going on. I mean, me
Yeah,
and
yeah,
Phil,
no, but Kevin,
man,
you
we
need
gotta
a
get our
nick.
promo
Kevin,
shots together,
no, the
dude.
problem is you need a nickname. The Barbarian's taken, but you got to come up with something like the Jet Setter or something that really fits your personality. That's what'll give you the exposure that you're looking for.
It is.
All right.
I gotta
All
work
right.
on my look, my image.
All
Yeah,
right.
definitely.
Let's work on some different photographs, for future shows. So most definitely, I'm with it. I'm with it. Let's do it. Well, previously we had advertised that Kevin Gordon would be with us. Of course, he's one of our original crew members, but prayers up for him and his family. He's got an emergent situations he's dealing with. Wish him in the best. And those are all the details that I have. I just got the word just moments before we went live, so we'll try to catch up with Kevin G when we can. I know he's probably not watching. He's got more important things, but I'll just put it into the air. Prayers up for you and your family, bro. Wish the best. And I don't really know much about the situation, so it'll just be the four amigos today, and we'll try to find some divergency and some friction as much as possible. Phil has said that he'll step into Kevin's shoes and play the right winger. So we're all good then. We're all good then.
To the
But now it's been
extent
a
that
minute,
it
bro.
doesn't make me sick to my stomach, I will. Yes.
Yeah, it might. It might.
Yeah.
Well, that might be a good way of starting in terms of sick to your stomach. This past week, we found out that President-elect Donald Trump was named Times Magazine's Man of the Year. And man, we know that we live in a real polarized world these days. And the internet has reflected that. Some people are applauding it, probably a lot of people who are Trump supporters or from MAGA world. And other people are saying it's absolutely the worst decision ever for a lot of different reasons. But I want to go to the crew and get your thoughts about it.
I got a question to ask, if I
Sure.
may. It might be helpful. Can
Start it
any
off.
of
Yeah.
can any of you gentlemen tell me who was the Time Magazine Man of the Year in 1938?
Hitler.
Hitler. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Hey, the 38 gave it away.
Yeah, I know. But the thing is that it's not based on how good a person or how good a leader. It's based on your impact on the world. So I think that's the basis for the award to Trump.
Yeah. I mean, Phil's exactly right. Time Magazine has been doing this since 1927. And it basically is about that, who has been the most influential or who has had the most impact, on events in a given year, good or bad, as referenced by the fact that you've had Hitler, Stalin, various other personalities. Mikhail Gorbachev has been on there a couple of times. And typically, if you look at the history of the Time Person of the Year, they changed it from Man of the Year, I think back in '99, to Person of the Year. And essentially, pretty much every president who's been elected during that year has been the Time Magazine Person of the Year. Obama was the Person of the Year in 2008 and 2012. George W. Bush in 2000 and 2024. Trump was Person of the Year in 2016. So Bill Clinton, going all the way back to George H.W. Bush, Reagan, Jimmy Carter. So it's not uncustomary that whomever has won the presidential election has been Time's Person of the Year. So I get people don't like it. I get we're living in these polarizing times, but this isn't anything new or anything different than what we've traditionally seen from Time Magazine.
So I have another perspective. I actually applaud it. I'm excited about it. I've been anti-Project 2025 and anti-Trump all this time, but I've yielded. I am now completely in the tank for our next president. Donald J. Trump, who will be sworn in.
You've sold out. You've sold out, Fanon.
I have sold out. He's going to be sworn in on Martin Luther King Day. I think it's a great thing. I think it's.
But now he must be the one brother that's gonna get a cabinet position. We don't know about that. That's what that is. That's what that sounds like to me.
They already gave the HUD position away to another guy, so he's gonna have to find something else.
Yeah.
But I agree. I mean, it's about who's garnered the most attention or who has shown that they have influence in several different corners of our mental and physical universe. And I as much as he is a polarizing figure, I don't know that anybody can come up with a more appropriate person who has garnered that attention than Trump. I don't know. And the reaction is exactly what they were looking for, because it's going to sell more magazines.
Yeah, I think, like it or not, whether you like him or not, one of the things that you can't dispute is that Trump is one of the most popular, and I mean popular by not necessarily fandom, but just being talked about in the public consciousness, probably one of the most known individuals on the planet. Whether you like him or not, you can't deny that. And you can't deny the influence that he has, for good or bad, not just here in the country, but around the world. I mean, everybody knows this guy. Everybody's concerned about what this guy is going to do and how it's going to impact their lives. That's indisputable. And for that reason alone, if you look at the criteria of how they choose person of the year and most influential, it's kind of hard to deny that he's not that.
Yeah, for me, well, check out this this clip I got from the internet. I don't know Nick Cudson, but I think he's spot on. He wrote, "Man crimes, man insurrects, man gaslights, man vilifies, man wins, man of the year, apparently, good Lord." And, I hear what you guys are saying, and I know that's the history of Time Magazine. I'm very well of that, but we're living in different times. This is another example of what gave rise to Donald Trump in the first place. Overlooking his crimes, overlooking the person that he is, and overlooking the threat that he is to our democracy, right? Whatever that means to the individual. This is a travesty. Time Magazine should be ashamed of itself, because they're sane washing this insane thing that we see in front of us. And it just goes back to the normalization process of Donald Trump. Like, we're going to overlook the fact that he's an adjudicated rapist. We're going to overlook the fact that he's an insurrectionist. We're going to overlook the fact that he's a con man on multiple levels. We're just going to overlook all of that because he's popular. It's a travesty.
But that's a misrepresentation of what it is, though, Nathan. That's a
travesty. And it's another example of what gave rise to this con man, crazy man in the first place. Shame on Time Magazines. This is a different time. We're in a different era. And it's another example of mainstream media not being prepared to deal with the threat on hand. They're treating Donald Trump like he's just a normal guy. Like,
they're not. That's not what's happening.
What they did.
Yeah, Nathan, that's not what's happening there, and that's not what Time Magazine typically does. I mean, look, let's just be real about what the purpose of journalism is. Journalism at its truest form is to report on and reflect on what's happening. And there's nothing that Time did in its piece, or that media does in general, that ignores who Donald Trump is. Now, yes, if you want to talk about sort of the Fox News phenomenon and all of that sort of thing. But all of the things that you just mentioned are not things that Time Magazine overlooked or anybody, excused or discounted. Look, you can't escape the fact that this man, like him or not, now
is the
most powerful man on the planet. And that's one of the scary things about, if you are concerned about this guy and what he's capable of, that's scary. But the American people chose that. And you can blame it on the media. You can blame it on the messenger. Like, look, media is always a convenient scapegoat for people when we don't like the decisions that people make. But we've got to come and reconcile with the fact that this is who the majority of Americans who voted chose.
By 1.5%.
And rather than blame the media for that, let's hold individual voters accountable for their choice.
Well,
And
can I?
We're
Can I?
talking about wait. We're talking about the media.
Shame on Time Magazine. Shame on the American people for putting this guy in office.
Oh, absolutely. But we're talking about the media, Kevin. So that's why we're focusing on them, because we're talking about the media. Time Magazine is a part of the media.
Sure, but this is a, and I get what you're saying, Nathan, that we live in different times and this, that, and the other. But the media is consistent in terms of the principles and things that we should use in going about covering individuals dispassionately, providing the facts, giving context, that sort of thing. One of the things that's gotten the media, in my opinion, into some trouble, and if you listen to people who have been giving feedback to the media, people want them to give them the facts. They don't want your opinion. They don't want your analysis. In fact, I just published a piece earlier today on Cincinnati.com.
Hey, Kevin, people want the facts when the facts line up to their point of view. That's what they want.
Well, but it doesn't matter. Facts are facts, regardless of what your point of view is, and that's where I'm getting into. That's where I'm getting into opinion and analysis. The facts are the facts. Right. It don't matter what your opinion is.
Exactly, and the fact is that Donald Trump is an insurrectionist, a con man, an adjudicated rapist, a serial liar. He poses a threat to democratic institutions, and he's a felon. Those are the facts.
Okay, and he's also the president of the United States and one of the most influential people on the planet. A lot of things can be true at the same time. And I don't think.
Can I say something about this?
Any of that?
Yeah, go right ahead, Phil.
Yeah, this is a theme we talked about before. I'm actually less concerned about Time Magazine because that is the purpose, whether you agree with the purpose or not. And I would also say to my friend Kevin that if people want the facts, then why are they watching Fox News, which is mostly just opinions? What concerns me is the capitulation of the media that I think we are seeing and are going to see as Trump goes into office, because this is what is scary. We already talked about how both Jeff Bezos caved in and wouldn't let the Washington Post print an editorial endorsing Harris. Same thing with the Los Angeles Times, and because both those guys have big government contracts, and but they also know that unlike a lot of politicians, Trump believes in getting even. And I've brought up the example of Viktor Orban in Hungary, who ended democracy by having his rich friends buy up the media. Okay, this is what really concerns me. And I think I mentioned before, and I've checked, this is true. MSNBC is being sold or is on the block by Comcast. Now, why is that? Well, and there's also been rumors that Elon Musk might buy it. Okay, if that happens, this is exactly what happened in Hungary. It's basically, you technically have free speech, but nobody who opposes the leader gets to speak.
Well, and then if Elon Musk buys it, he will be the man of the year in 2025 like he was in 2021. Again, what we're talking about, and you can look at the list, Phil pointed out that Hitler was man of the year in 38. I have to offer that in 1938, probably 60% of the world looked at that, and there weren't 60% cheers. There was 60%, oh my gosh, are you kidding? And it's from this fledgling magazine that had worldwide reach, who's recognizing in what appears to be an aggrandizing way a person who is systematically killing, exterminating a whole race of people and not being shy about it. And over the years, there have been people who 49% of the folks said, oh my God, are you serious? And 51% said, that's great, or just the opposite. I don't think this is any different here. But what I do believe is that what needs to happen is people need to pay attention and read the article and say, why was he chosen as man of the year? Not just the fact that his face is on there and he's appears to be being celebrated, because he's not being celebrated. He's being pointed out for all those things that Nathan said. He's a liar. He is a malicious rapist. He is a manipulator. He's a control freak. He's a horrible, hateful individual, and he still got elected. That would put you on any timeline of incredible people throughout history as bad as you are with convictions and everything else. Just my thought.
And let me just say this. I always love when people sort of talk about the media who have never been to journalism school, who have never studied the discipline, who always want to lecture the media on what the media should be. And what I always say is be careful what you ask for, because there are certain standards and things that the media does in terms of adhering to impartiality and trying to remain as objective as they possibly can be. And what people are calling on the media to do now is to be activists. Like, that's what people want the media to be. And what I say is you better be careful about what you ask for, because when the activism lines up with what you want, you're cool with the media. But when the activism doesn't line up with what you want, then you don't want the media to be that. It needs to be something else. And so I think we're in a bad spot in terms of what people should expect that fourth estate to be, which is the role of holding the powerful accountable, doing checks and balances. And yes, sometimes that means on reporting on people that you feel like shouldn't deserve that platform. But it's like, this man is the president of the United States. How do you not cover him as a media? It would be irresponsible to not do that. You've got to make the public aware of what he's doing, how he's thinking. Who is this guy actually? What influence does he actually have? And unfortunately, that's going to give him a platform, and that's going to put him on some stages that are going to make people uncomfortable. But you got to understand what the role of the media has traditionally been throughout the history of this country, and the role that it has to play. When you want and it's fine for activism to have a place on the editorial and opinion pages of news publications. But again, when you're reporting on instances and facts and things of that nature, there are lines you just can't cross, as journalists. And I think that that's been one of the things that's gotten the media into trouble over the last few years, is that the public is trying to challenge the media to take on a quote unquote activist role that is better served by other institutions and other groups.
No.
Yeah.
No. I mean, all I can say is I hear what you're saying. I respect it, but I'm not asking the media to be an activist. In this case, me criticizing Time Magazine for elevating and sane washing this con man criminal.
But it's not sane washing. You're calling reporting sane washing.
And
that's not what it is.
It's exactly what it is. It's sane washing it. I read the article and I read some of their thought processes. It was even worse inside the article. Matter of fact, I got a snippet I can share with you. And the effect that it's having on some people is that it's sort of whitewashing and sane washing a lot of things that Donald Trump did wrong. So I'm not asking the media to be an activist. Hey, listen, Kevin, there's a reason why a lot of people are turning away from mainstream media. There's a reason behind that. And
I know exactly what the reasons are.
What I would say for the people in the media, instead of being cynical, saying people want you to be activists, that's not it. I think people want you to have a conscience. They want you to be authentic, and they want you to stand on business. Whatever you say you are, be that at all times. That's what people are asking for.
Yeah, I've kind of said what I said about my views on it. I go off of what I hear. I go off of what I read. I go off of, what people express to me in the streets about what it is that they're looking for. And, my thing is that journalists are doing what they have traditionally and what they have always done, which is attempt to reflect and cover and bring to light and to hold accountable, those who are in power. And
but that's not true, though. But that's not.
It absolutely is true.
Well,
it absolutely is true.
That's not true, and that's not true in all cases. In some cases,
well, what is true in all cases, though, Nathan? I mean, you can't.
That's a separate question.
So Phil brought up Fox News. Okay, let me say this first.
But I was about to make a point, though.
Let me say this first and foremost, just about media literacy.
I had it out.
Okay, let me finish.
Go right ahead.
Let me say this about media literacy. First of all, you got to understand what you're looking at when you watch it. So when you watch Sean Hannity, when you watch Tucker Carlson, when you watch Rachel Maddow and some of these other folks, people will say, "Oh, that's news. That's news." No, it's not. These are personalities who are giving you their opinions on on issues and things that are going on. They're not reporters. They're not reporters out in the field covering this day in and day out.
Time Magazine. We're talking about Time Magazine. That's what we're talking about. You just made a point. You said the media has always done what it's always did. And I'm just simply saying that's not true. As Phil pointed out earlier, you've got major publications that within the last couple of election cycles have decided to stop doing endorsements. They stopped doing endorsements. So they stopped doing something they've always done because they are capitulating to the power and what's happening with Trump. That's the only point I'm trying to make.
That's not true in every case.
I didn't say it was every case.
In other words, the Inquirer, we stopped doing editorials probably about 10 years ago. Right. And there are a variety of different reasons as to why that was
Yvette Simpson and John Cranley, the mayoral race. And the Inquirer took a lot of heat from that because the perception is they were capitulating to the former mayor John Cranley.
So if I tell you that's not true and that's wrong, and you continue to go with that, and you continue to go with that narrative.
But if I
would tell you that that's absolutely not the reason why the Inquirer quit doing endorsements. But if you don't want to say that, what can I tell you about that?
If you told me that, I would believe you. But I just said what people thought 10 years ago. 10 years ago.
Well, I mean, you can't help what people think. You can only tell them what your reasons are, and they can believe it or not believe it. If you choose not to believe it, that's a you problem, not a me problem.
Absolutely. But the point is that there are some media entities that are not doing what they always used to do. And Phil just gave you examples of it. So that is not true. Time Magazine should be ashamed of itself for elevating this con man criminal and sane washing him to the American, really the international community. Shame on Time Magazine. That's just my thoughts.
Nicole Taylor, one of our members of the audience, said Taylor Swift had a great year. They could have chosen her. It's not not a bad thought.
Not a bad thought at all.
She certainly is influential and impactful.
Hey, what about Beyonce? She had one of the greatest country music albums of all time this past year. She don't get no love?
I think they should have named Diddy as the person of
why not? He could be in 2026. Wait till all this court stuff, or 2025. Wait till all this court stuff come out. He could very well be on cover of Time next time.
Absolutely. Well, let's keep it with Time Magazine. So we talked about the person of the year. There's also some controversy surrounding Time Magazine's choice for Athlete of the Year, Caitlin Clark, who I don't think anybody is going to disagree with her having a spectacular year. That's the cover right there. And I did read the article. You know, the combination of the words and also the photographs. I mean, it's just pure art, and people should check it out. And I hope that she's successful. I wish all people are successful, except for Donald Trump and his MAGA buddies. Their plot for the American people. I do not want their plot for the American people to be successful. I want the country to be successful, but there's been some controversy because as a part of her interview, she said this, quote, "I want to say I've earned every single thing, but as a white person, there is privilege. A lot of those players in the league that have been really good have been black players. This league has kind of been built on them. The more we can appreciate that, highlight that, talk about that, and then continue to have brands and companies invest in those players that have made this league incredible, I think is very important. I have to continue to try to change that. The more we can elevate black women, that's going to be a beautiful thing." And MAGA folks went crazy. They went crazy. I read all kind of comments. She was talked about on Fox News, and basically people felt like, you know, she should just stay out of politics and stay out of whatever and remain neutral. I kept hearing this over and over again. She should have remained neutral. But people have a lot of problems, or some people have problems with the fact that she talked about white people having privilege. And I wanted to know what you guys thought about that. Is she on point or is she off point? Okay, Phil, we'll start with you.
I appreciate Time Magazine's Athlete of the Year using the platform of attention that she received to point out something that 48% of the population disagrees with, but that the other 52% of us know actually exists. I appreciate her being willing to do that. And for those that, denigrate her for her opinion and for her experience. Talking loud and saying nothing doesn't mean the facts aren't the facts.
Yeah. I applaud Caitlin for what she said. I won't go so far as to say it was brave or courageous. I just think it was a right thing to do. I think, I'm very selective in terms of how I use those adjectives to describe one's actions or words. But I will say this: I think she said the right thing and what needed to be said for someone in her position and with her level of influence and popularity and attention. And I think it's sort of at the crux of what a lot of the pushback that you saw against her was, particularly from some of the more established veterans in the WNBA, particularly Black female players in the WNBA, who felt like, hey, we've been here doing this for years, sweating and bleeding and building the foundation of this league. And here comes Caitlin Clark, and all of a sudden it's like none of the rest of us have been here putting in work. Nobody's been putting in work but her. So kudos to her for that acknowledgement and saying, look, I recognize who was here before me, who set the stage and this platform for me to even be able to come in here and take advantage. But here's what I'll say about what Caitlin Clark said, what I thought was just insightful if you listen to her comment. And I think this is at the crux of what, and Phil can chime in on this.
He looked like he's about to blow up. Phil looked like he's about to lose his mind over there.
But this is at the crux. I am at peace, gentlemen. I'm at peace. I can wait my turn.
This is at the crux of what I believe a lot of white people struggle with when you start talking about
there you go, right? Again, attacking my people. All right.
No, I'm just saying, I think this is what white people struggle with. Caitlin Clark said this, you got to pay attention to her words. She says, I believe that I worked hard for everything that I have earned, right? And I think all white folk, whether you're black, white, or whatever, I think all people who have achieved some success want to say that, hey, I've worked hard. I've earned everything that I have coming to me. I think where white folks have somewhat of a difficulty making the connection there is that they benefit from a system, an invisible system to them, and an invisible obstacles that they don't have to overcome that people of color do have to overcome. Certain stereotypes and expectations that people of color have to overcome, starting with, hey, are you even the most qualified person for the job, right? The fact that as a minority, you even have to deal with that question is a privilege that white folks most of the time don't even have to endure, because if you get the job, there's automatically the assumption that you were qualified, that you got it because you worked hard for it, not that you were a DEI hire or something like that. So there are these invisible obstacles that white folks don't have to deal with. And that's what Caitlin Clark is acknowledging. Not that she didn't work hard, not that she didn't earn certain things, but her path, right, was not the same path as a person of color. She didn't have to overcome some of the obstacles that some of her counterparts in that league had to overcome to get there. And I think that is a smart acknowledgement.
And
you want me to jump in?
No, go ahead, Phil. I'm just kind of my wheels are spinning, but go ahead.
I think I shared on another show what my dad had said to me when I was growing up, and pointed to this black guy working some manual job in my house and taking me aside and just saying, this guy could have been a doctor or lawyer, but he did not grow up in a time when he could have that opportunity, which I give my parents a lot of credit for having, as I mentioned before, having that kind of mentality and understanding and sense of justice that probably most didn't have. As far as this Caitlin Clark thing goes, I'll tell you what really bugs me about sports today is the complete arrogance and lack of humility. Maybe the dancing in the end zone, it's the me thing, that thing. I mean, granted, I'm dating myself. I grew up with the Green Bay Packers, and when somebody scored a touchdown, they just got it walked off the field, okay? But the arrogance that we see today, I heard a story the other day. You guys may have heard this. Bob Trumpy, when he played for the Bengals for Paul Brown, when he scored his, I guess, first touchdown, he spiked the ball. He did something like this, And he came off the field, and Paul Brown said to him, "Hey, next time act like you've been there before." And to me, I love that. I love that comment. And what I liked about what Caitlin Clark said was the humility. It wasn't just, yeah, me. She was acknowledging that she was competing against people that may not have had the same opportunities that she had. So it's the humility that really impressed me.
The only thing
Are
I would
you
push back on,
acknowledging, Phil, that she may be right in her assessment that the other people she plays with may not have had the same opportunity in 2024 as she did as a white person? I'm trying to understand if that's what you're acknowledging.
I'm not going to argue about whether they had the same opportunity or not. I mean, let's say they're most are in their 20s, and I would say over the last 20 years or so, it's a far cry from the Jackie Robinson days. Okay, but what impressed me is not so much factually whether the people she's playing with or against had discrimination. Maybe so, maybe not. But I'm just saying her attitude was to just acknowledge that she may have had some opportunities others didn't have.
And that's why I offered is brave. Here is what is she, 22 perhaps? Here's a 22-year-old who, in an age where everything that we do and say as public figures, and I'm not saying public official, but as a public figure, somebody who has attention and followers, and all of us have followers and stuff like that, is immediately scrutinized to a most ridiculous degree. Everything that we do. And the younger you are, the more impactful emotionally that scrutiny can be and is. And we talk about cyberbullying and all those kind of things. So here is someone who has no obligation or duty to go in that direction, and she does anyway, recognizing that what's likely is that they're going to be a significant amount of critics throwing darts at her unnecessarily, or something. Again, that's self-imposed. She didn't have to do that. And that's why I called it brave early. I mean, I'm not calling her Lyndon Johnson for standing on the floor and saying we shall overcome and appointing Thurgood Marshall to the Supreme Court as president that I truly appreciate. I'm not saying brave like that, but certainly in this context, in this day and age, it was brave because it wasn't necessary. She wasn't obligated to do that. And knowing what probably was going to come from that, like I said, I applaud her and say that was a brave move.
yeah, for me, well, before I give my flows on it, I just want to acknowledge some people who are in the audience. Aaliyah, Anthony, and Nat, Jason, hey, Kevin, and Regina, Anthony, everybody, David is in the house, Pamela, hey, Michael, good to see you, Cleopatra, Crystal, Elizabeth, Michael, Nicole, Brenda, TNT, one of our crew members. Hey, Frankie, Sandra, Janice, all the good people. Thank you so much for spending some time with us. I know you're really busy. There's so many other places you could be. And the fact you're taking a couple minutes to be with us, I really appreciate it. I think I speak for the whole crew. We all really appreciate you being here with us. We will be taking phone calls today. It'll be our first, whoever wants to be the first phone caller into Hot Mic, I'll put the number up again. I've been forgetting to do this over the last couple of weeks. I want to make sure I extend that invitation to you to give us a call, and we'll try to integrate whatever your comment or question is to the crew and into our conversation. But yeah, I can't disagree with anything that Fanon was saying per se. To me, Caitlin Clark was just being real. And I'm just keeping in mind the fact that she's 22. She is so young. Like when we were 22, we thought we was the smartest thing going. When I was 22, you couldn't tell me nothing. Boy, I had a six pack.
I remember that when
Man,
we did that interview together. I noticed that.
Exactly. That was a lot of fun, man. That was a very humbling experience. I appreciate that. Yeah, it really was. I'll tell the story again. It's a lot of fun with Phil. And he didn't even remember. He was like, nah, I went golfing afterward. I ain't think anything of it. He just crushed my little dreams that day for the second time. But when I was 22, man, listen, you couldn't tell me nothing. I'm dunking behind the back, left hand, right hand, catching oops on the break. Man, listen. But at the 22, you don't know anything. And so on some levels, for her to be able to acknowledge that, I give her credit for it. She could have went a lot further. It would have been gangster in real if she said, hey, look, I work hard, but because of privilege, you wouldn't even name me time athlete of the year if I was a different color, because that's the truth, right? I mean,
now hold it. Are you saying black people never get named athlete of the year?
I'm saying, and it's just an opinion, that I don't think that she would have been named athlete of the year.
Okay, who would
if
have?
She was black.
Who would have?
I don't know.
Well, I mean, who would you say? What black person do you know that was more deserving than her? Because that's the implication you're saying. So
Yeah,
give us the person. Give us the person.
Michael Jordan. Every year of his life, Michael Jordan. That's my answer for everything.
Michael Jordan hasn't played in 15 years. What are you talking about?
Michael Jordan will always be the answer to athlete of the year.
Okay, I'll go Michael Jordan.
Even if he's not playing. How about Babe Ruth? How about Babe Ruth? I mean, it's ridiculous.
Right. Why not Pete Rose, right? That is a completely fair question, and I don't have an answer for you, Phil. You're right. That's a completely plausible question to what I'm saying here. But that would have been gangster. It would have been gangster if she talked about, everything but the burden.
Yeah, but it wouldn't have been true.
Well, I mean, it's a matter of opinion. We can disagree on that. But again, she's 22. She don't even know these concepts. She ain't thinking about that. So I give her props for acknowledging these sisters that came before her, because she is absolutely right. The WNBA has been largely built off of the backs of black female athletes. She's right to do that on so many different levels. And I think she's going to get a lot of respect from the players too, who see her acknowledging that. And I think it's a overall good thing. For me, and the way I do things, and the way I look at things, she could have went a step further too, but I give her a props for what she said.
That's big of you.
It is. He cares a whole lot, Phil.
And we also got to keep in the context too, Nathan. I mean, this is a journalistic piece and interview. So she may have. You always have to acknowledge in those situations that she may have said more. Yeah. That when you're working through the filter of a writer or a reporter, they give you what they think are the most salient parts and leave a lot of things out. So she could have gone and elaborated a little bit more in her comments. We don't know that, but I get what you're saying, and I think that the fact that, and let's give her a little bit credit too. She is 22, but I will say when you are on that type of stage and you have that kind of profile and popularity, you get coached up a little bit more. You have to be a little bit more polished and on top of your game. Like this is the most profiled, popular female athlete at least in this year in the game of women's basketball. And so she is got to be up on way more stuff than probably the average person, because she's going to be interviewed and talked to a lot. So I think you got to give her some degree of credit to say that she probably has to be a little bit more prepared, a little bit more educated and schooled up on these things than the average athlete.
Oh, she better be, because if she makes one mistake, we're so polarized. I mean, look at this. To me, she didn't even make a mistake. And why? And you've got MAGA world, primarily that's what they are, MAGA world, that are criticizing her because she admitted that there's white privilege. So we're living in an age where you've got a significant portion of the overall media, a lot of it is digital media and Fox News, which has a huge influence, that are trying to remake history like right in front of us. And that's why I keep saying we are living in different times. But, I'll bring that up time in the future if it makes sense. We just got a phone call. If you just called, it may have been me. Maybe I hung up on you. You want to get on air, call us back. I'll put the number back up. And we would love to have our first caller. Our number is 513-873-7134. Looks like that might have been Kevin. Hey, Kevin, give us a call back, man. I'll try to put you on.
He said calls aren't going through or not able to hear you, Nate.
Yeah. Just call back and I'll try to work it out. Michael writes, as I said, LOL, politics ruined sports for me. Okay, why? Well, don't let that happen, man. Sports can be a lot of fun. We need sports. Sometimes you just need a mindless, disengagement or period where you're just watching the game and you're not really thinking about all the heavy stuff. So don't let the politics spoil your fun, man. Enjoy your life.
I'll tell you what's ruining college sports for me. This is maybe for another day or another topic. This transfer pool and NIL. It makes the whole thing makes me sick. That
Really?
it makes me sick. First of all, every year, okay, there's no loyalty. Half your team jumps and goes to another team. It's like, just join the NFL if you're going to do that. And then the money, the NIL, I don't like it. It's professional. So if it's going to be professional, why can't the
Hey,
colleges? I know about the Supreme
Wanna get
Court.
on?
Why can't the colleges have the right to say,
Okay, I'm
okay,
gonna try
this
to
is
put
for
you on.
students. Okay, this is for students. It's not for paid people. You want to play for pay? Go to the NFL.
Well, I think we can get into this whole NIL and whether it's athletes. I mean, this is a decades old argument, and I think I'm in that group and category to say, well, just a free public education for all of the money that these universities and these coaches and everything makes off the names and likenesses of these athletes. I think to say the equivalent of a college education is what these institutions make off of these athletes.
Then
I
don't
just
go to college. Go to the pros then. If you want
Well,
money, go to the pros.
look, the NBA tried that for a number of years, and you saw how college sports suffered from that when the best athletes were making the jump from high school to pro. It wasn't good for anybody. It wasn't good for college basketball. It wasn't good for pro basketball.
It was fine for college
I just think this notion of college athletes or amateur athletes not being able to make money off of their likenesses. I just think that that's probably one of the most ridiculous arguments ever. If you have the ability, if others can make money off of you and your talent, I should be able to make money off of my name and my talent. And I think it's elitist. I think it is self-serving to argue anything other than these kids deserve to get paid for their time.
I'll tell you,
their name.
This argument that these college stars were exploited, I think, is a lot of BS. Okay,
absolutely they were.
Excuse me.
Absolutely they were.
Excuse me.
Absolutely
compare their life. Second, compare their life to the life of a normal college student. These guys, everything's paid for. They're probably the most popular guys on campus or whatever. And I wouldn't say they're having sex with anyone they want, but it's probably close to that. I mean, they get everything paid for. How about the average student that has to wait on tables? Okay, or borrow
the average student should have applied themselves in athletics as well.
To pay tuition. Those guys, and they get cheered on by thousands, hundreds of thousands every weekend. I don't think that's such a bad life. I don't think that's such exploitation.
Well, there's a difference between what's a bad life and what's fair. What's fair, Phil? I mean, if you were working for a company and they were making billions of dollars off of your idea, but they were paying you minimum wage, you would have an issue with that. And that's the equivalent to what these universities are doing with these kids' talent. I mean, look.
How about the idea? How about the old-fashioned?
You're entitled to your opinion, but you ain't gonna win this argument with me on that. They deserve everything they're getting.
It doesn't mean I didn't win it. But what about the old days when they actually had students playing? Real college students. I don't think these guys.
It wasn't right then.
Now. So it's a pro league. If it's going to be pro, go to the NFL. Don't pollute our college
because there were rules, Phil, that said the league set up rules. The NFL, you have to play 3 years of college football in order to be eligible. For the NFL. That's the NFL's rule.
I'm not so sure about
players
that.
have in the past tried to challenge that. They tried to challenge that and saying that those rules were. Fanon, I can't remember what the terminology is for that, where the unfairness of those rules that were preventing athletes from pursuing their professional dreams because the NFL says you got to have 3 years.
Okay, what about minor leagues like they do in baseball? They already have semi-pro teams around the country, a little bit like your basketball team. I mean, let them play not semi-pro. Let them play minor league. They have teams. But colleges are supposed to.
But why are you so against them making money, Phil? What's your argument against these athletes being able to make money? What, other than you don't like it? What's a good reason?
Well, first of all, will you at least agree with me that the transfer pool that lets those guys jump teams every year, that's a negative thing? Will you agree with me on that?
For who? It's negative for who?
Negative for the fans. I root for Stanford, for example, and of course. I've had a lot of disappointments over the years, but that's my personal bitterness. But to be honest with you, what I like about at least so far, is they actually have real students playing, real students. Most of these schools, because of the transfer pool and because of the NIL, they're not going to class. They're just paid professionals.
It's
And to
always
me,
been that way, Phil. Even in the old days,
no,
everything you're talking about are things that existed. And I get what you're saying. As a fan of college sports, we like
yeah,
we like things the way that they used to be. Players
yeah,
staying 3 and 4 years. You got to know who they were,
yeah,
and everything you're saying is true. It has diluted sort of the overall quality and consistency of the game.
yes,
I will not
exactly.
argue it. I will not argue with you there. But that is a separate argument as to whether or not these kids should be able to get what they have coming to
Well,
them.
we're funding
And
it. We're paying the tickets, and
we
we're
should
watching.
not deny those kids those things because as fans, because the bottom line is as a fan, you don't care whether that kid can afford to order a pizza or get a suit to go to you don't care about that as a fan. You honestly, you don't. And most fans don't care about what happens to these kids once they leave the university, period. So if we're going to be honest about that, then let these kids at least get what and that's the part that fans don't want to be. You don't give a hoot
Yeah.
about these kids once they're no longer at
No,
Kentucky.
first of all, I
North
pointed
Carolina
out,
or whatever.
I pointed out a few minutes ago, the life of a college athlete, especially football and basketball, the life compared to an average student that has to take a student loan out or wait tables to earn a few bucks. If you're saying those guys are exploited, let me tell you something. Their life is one hell of a good life. Not to mention, think about this: if an average college education is, let's say, $50,000, I don't know, they're getting $200,000 for that. That is if they're getting $200,000 plus all the other goodies. Okay, so don't tell me somebody who's getting $200,000 for throwing a football is being exploited.
Capitalism, baby. That's what the American dream is on. If I got the talent and I got the ability, let me make that money, baby. That's capitalism. Phil, you're a Republican. Come on, man. You're sounding like a socialist now.
All right,
Man,
now
I see why Kevin Gordon wants you out the party.
Now you're teaming up on me with Kevin Gordon. He says I ought to be a Democrat. You say I ought to be a socialist. I'm losing my identity. That's what's happening on this show.
You know, it is clear to me after listening to you guys that
I'm right. I'm right.
That while there may be some kinks that need to be ironed out, as there would be with any new process, the NIL process is doing a whole lot more good than it's doing bad. A whole lot more good.
Disagree. Totally disagree.
Let's use your own example. You brought up the fact and I don't. This was an apples and oranges comparison, but you brought it up, so let's work with it. So you're comparing athletes, student athletes, people that go out and perform on the field and make money for the university to college students who are bussing tables. The student that's working in the student union, you know, bussing tables is not potentially bringing millions of dollars into the athletic program. And to Kevin's point, you know, you said, you know, if you got a player that's making $200,000, you say he's not exploited. Well, we don't know. It depends on how much the university is making. If the university is making $400,000 off of him, no, he's not being exploited. But if the university is making $20 million off of him and he's making $200,000, yes, he's being exploited.
Well, just to take what Kevin said the last time he spoke, I was nodding my head with, because it is the fans who buy the tickets. It is the fans who watch the commercials that make the money for them. And I am speaking as a fan, that I don't like the fact that these guys are basically they're not students. That it's not college football. It's pro football. And I still am interested let's look at it from a fan standpoint. Can you guys at least agree from a fan standpoint that letting people transfer every year wherever they want, it just takes away from the joy of the game,
Not
at least
at
from
all.
a fan standpoint?
Not at all.
I don't want to say, look, you don't think, like, for example, when you're watching even Bengals or the pros have done this for years, but I mean, don't you, if you're a college football fan, or college basketball, as I am very much, I like the fact that these players, you get to know them, that they're not the idea they're there because maybe they want to play for this team, instead of the fact that we have a whole new team every year. You don't want to root for somebody nearly as much if they're jumping ship after 1 year.
You know, my thought about that, Phil, real quickly, is that I don't think that most fans care. If you are a Colorado Buffalo football fan, all you care about is them having a winning record every single year and getting to a bowl game. The names of the individual players don't really matter that much.
Well,
And
what's his name? The
let's
quarterback, Chenier Sanders, whatever his name is. I'll guarantee you, I
Shador?
don't know what you,
But
whatever. What after 1 year there, of course, it's different because his dad was the coach and all. But putting that aside, if he took off after a year, you think the Colorado fans would say, "Oh no, we'll just get another quarterback"?
Yeah,
No,
that's exactly what they're going to do.
But let's take a look at Let's take a look at and be honest about what's happening with the transfer portal and the NIL. Most of the good players, the starting players who are on high-profile teams like the Alabamas, they're not the ones who are entering the transfer portals and moving from teams. Every now and again, that happens. That happened with the Ohio State quarterback this past year. But what it's enabling some kids to do are, if you're buried behind an All-American quarterback on the depth chart, and I can go from Ohio State to maybe an SMU and become a starting quarterback there versus having to sit behind a guy that I'm not going to get to play behind for a couple of years, yeah, I'm going to enter the transfer portal and I'm going to move to a different team where I have an opportunity to play rather than sitting behind a guy for 2 or 3 years. If I'm the third running back on Alabama, I'm probably as good as a starting running back at like Central Florida. So why do I have to wait 3 years behind, some All-American at Alabama when I can transfer and go play? Like, that's a lot of what you're seeing in the transfer portal is guys.
There's a lot of big time
opportunities,
big time players on major teams to transfer to. But I hear your point. But first of all, it didn't used to be 4 years. The rule was you had to sit out a year. That was the rule. Okay, and I don't think that's so terrible. You made a choice to go to that.
Have to do it.
Just a second.
Why should a coach be able to leave a program? You've had coaches leave a program before the season was over. What was it? UC's coach
Brian
left
Kelly,
before the bowl game. Left before the bowl game and took another job. He didn't have to sit out a year. So why are we punishing the kids?
Well, that needs to be changed. Okay, as far as the coaches go. But I'll tell you something. If you look at Brian, I felt the same way that year when they went to the Sugar Bowl and he wasn't there. The fact of the matter is, these schools know who these guys are. Like Notre Dame knew, and they still hired him. And then he jumped ship. You remember? Notre Dame was in contention for the playoff, and he jumped ship to LSU. Well, shame on you. If you hire a guy who has that history, the same with Cal Perry and these other guys, tough luck if you're foolish enough to do that.
All right.
I'll just leave it here to my last comment. I'll say it's a business. And the problem that we have with college sports is we want to act like it's amateur, that it's students. College football and college sports have always been a business. It's always been about the money. The only problem is that up until recently, everybody who's been able to make money on that has been everybody except for the athletes. And now that's changed and people have a problem with it. The reality is that if you are on scholarship at a college and a university, the job you're interviewing for is the pros. You can say student athlete and all of that's nice, but the reality is that the vast majority of guys, not saying all, but the vast majority of guys have aspirations of making it to the league so that they can become pro athletes, make hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars. And that is the job that they're interviewing for. And to pretend otherwise, that they're going to be some chemist or doctor, yes, absolutely. You do have some student athletes. But I'm just saying the vast majority of guys, what they're majoring in is professional sports at that level. You need to stop pretending.
First of all, again, I remind you that they're getting, if they stay 4 years, they're getting probably over $200,000, $300,000 in educational benefits. And I can tell you, there are a significant number of people that I know that praise that whole system because they were athletes, but it got them an education that they needed. I'm sure he wouldn't mind
because they didn't go pro.
Yeah, they didn't go pro. Well, maybe they did, or maybe they did. Hey, Gonzalez, who was one of the guys who had the guts, a Republican in Ohio, to vote to impeach Trump. He spent a couple years in Indianapolis Colts after Ohio State, did well. Then he went to get his MBA, and then he got into politics. That happens a lot with a lot of people. And it's still going to happen. I'll mention. I'll think of his name in a minute. Jeff, I just thought who owns all those Anderson. and I think he wouldn't mind my saying this, so I'm going to say it. He owns all those he develops all those lifestyle centers, you know what I mean? Like Deerfield and Rookwood and all that. Well, he was a scholarship athlete at University of Virginia, and to hear him, and he's donated a lot to them as a thank you, but he deeply appreciates that he had that whatever $400,000 or $500,000 worth of education. It's not like they're just getting penny anted out here. And another thing I'll point out before this NIL stuff, the NCAA had certain standards, and maybe they didn't enforce them as well as they should. But you had to have a certain GPA. You had to have a certain board scoring GPA to get into the college, and you had to maintain a certain grade average to stay there. And so to answer your question, that they weren't always professional. There was the element of the under table money, yes, but there were also academic standards.
All right. Well, interesting.
You guys like the way
there.
I put that tangent? We got off on a whole new topic. I think I deserve a little credit for that.
Okay, well, here you go. A little credit for you there. I thought it was interesting.
As long as you don't expect any NIL money for that, Phil.
From you guys?
No money.
I don't expect a dime from you guys.
No money for you. Exactly. No NIL money. So big news this week in what's being called the largest single day act of clemency in modern history. Joe Biden, current President Joe Biden, commuted the sentences of roughly 1,500 people and also pardoned 69 Americans who were convicted of nonviolent crimes. And there were a lot of people on the internet, I think I brought this up last week, who were urging Joe Biden to do something just like this for two reasons. Number one, because it's the just and right thing to do. I would love for us to have a conversation on a state level on the usage of the pardon power. I think it's underutilized in terms of it being a tool for justice. But Joe Biden made this move. I also think it's good politics on the national level, because I think now it'll set up a compare and contrast to whatever Trump is going to do in terms of the January 6th rioter, insurrectionists. Many of whom are sitting in jail right now. So that's my thoughts about what Joe Biden did. What are your thoughts? Good move, bad move, good for the country, bad for the country? What do you think?
Well, so just a government primer, what we need to reiterate to the folks is the executive, the legislative, and the judicial. Those are the three branches of government, not just in the national government, but in every state. So when we want to talk about state activity, the governor has the same executive powers in his state as the president does in his realm. So when we're talking about the president pardoning or providing clemency or commuting sentences, those are only able to be done with federal crimes because the president is over the feds. So when we talk about the Governor DeWine in Ohio has all power in the world of clemency for state crimes. That is an absolute truth. And just given that prime before we go delve into this conversation, 1,500 individuals had their sentences commuted. Now, what we do know is that most of those who had their sentences commuted had been placed on home incarceration during COVID. Now, he didn't have to whittle it down, and that was just one day, and it was the largest single day commutation of sentences that any president has ever done. It's not the largest number of sentences that have been pardoned or the largest number that have been commuted, but in a single day, it was. And specifically, it seemed like he was targeting those who have been placed on home incarceration. And let's be honest, when you're on home incarceration from a federal prison, why are you still considered in prison? Why are you still considered locked up after years? I can understand if you're on a pretrial detention. I can understand if in the transition between your sentence from prison off into the world, that there's some period of getting there. And so that's that time perhaps that you'd be on home incarceration. But we're talking about 4 years, almost 5 years of home incarceration from a sentence that some got, that many say because of the sentencing guidelines in the feds are too stoic and are not flexible enough to allow people to have sentences reviewed or to be released early. So in his executive exercise, he, I think, did what was right and certainly within his power, shouldn't be criticized because every single president has exercised it. He did what was right. He carefully reviewed or had a body review those sentences and the charges and the histories and the interviews of those people. And he said, you know what? Justice requires justice demands, and I believe in my concept of justice, this is the right thing to do. I appreciate it. 49 had their sentences pardoned altogether, which means they're white clean. And I think that's important. And we really do need to look at the individual stories of why he did those to the 49 people.
Well, you know, like Fanon, I'm a former prosecutor, and I was always an aggressive, I think, tough prosecutor. When I was dealing with violent criminals or somebody who had ripped off hundreds of individuals, I pushed for a long sentence. But overall, I believe that the sentences are much too long in this country, much too long. And I felt it then, and I obviously had to keep my voice muted. And I also have to say that I think there's an incredible lack of mercy in that system. I can remember, I don't know how many times, some high school kid, when I was a prosecutor, get caught with, I don't know, 5 tabs, 6 to 8 tabs of LSD. And he's looking at a mandatory 3 years, high school kid. And I would go to, at the time, who was my boss, and I'd say, look, can we give this guy a whatever so he doesn't have the mandatory time? You know what my boss would say to me? He'd say, well, what, we can't prove it? We can't prove it? I'd say, yeah, we can prove it. But I mean, you're going to send a high school kid for, he didn't care. He didn't care. And I think the whole system, don't get me wrong, again, I was very tough and aggressive on violent crime and white collar guys. I was known as an aggressive, but there is a tremendous lack of mercy in that system. And I first of all give Biden tremendous credit for what he did. The idea that people are locked up for marijuana offenses, that now it wouldn't be illegal, it'd be perfectly legal. And Fanon is 100% correct. The governors of all the states, red states included, should be doing the same thing. They should certainly be looking for drug offenders that weren't major dealers, but drug offenders that are in jail and need to be let out.
And, you know, and if I could, to that point, during COVID, Governor DeWine did just that. He looked at state convictions and folks who were in, and it was kind of a national move, and we should have captured it more at the time. He looked at and commuted the sentences of nonviolent offenders or individuals who had some type of ailments in order to reduce the jail population and to reduce the risk of people catching COVID. And it was an argument that I and many others made. See, this is exactly how we can reduce the prison. If it's okay right now, it's okay generally. If you can look at this and say, for justice sake, it's okay if I release this person early or I commute this person's sentence. That shouldn't be simply a reaction to what we believe was a deadly disease. If right is right and it's okay to reduce this sentence now, then it should be okay to reduce that sentence later. And I will offer that this administration in Ohio has been pretty aggressive in taking steps to review and to set up a streamlined process in order to provide clemency to people who are requesting it. And they have granted quite a few just in the past 4 years. We've had some pretty aggressive sentencing and justice reform in Ohio. I appreciate it. I was part of it when I was on the bench, and I've watched it since then. And I have to say, they haven't ignored it as an issue. And COVID was the impetus for them changing this process and kind of streamlining it more than they had before.
And getting back quickly to the Trump pardoning these January 6 guys, this has got to be the worst example in the history of this country. I mean, even with the terrible Japanese internment and other things, to say to this country that these people who committed terrible acts of violence, resulting in several deaths, and we Republicans, we're supposed to be the law and order party, aren't we? Well, what the heck happened to law and order? 150 cops were injured. In him doing this, first of all, it shows how people are willing to believe something that didn't happen. He calls it a day of love, and everybody sits there and says, "Oh, okay, it's on video, for God's sakes."
It's
Well, you know what,
Will. It's Will for
he's right.
Yeah, people
Right.
don't believe that. They're just going along with what they want to go along with.
They watch the video. It's on video.
Yeah, Phil, but that's
Gotta understand
like I said, that's
Phil.
willful ignorance. That's just going along with your guy and supporting your guy and ignoring
Horrible.
evidence.
It's terrible.
That has nothing to
terrible.
do with, hey, I actually believe what they're saying or the line of bull that they're feeding me. It's like, I don't want to believe it. I'm choosing not to believe it, and I don't care because this is the side that I'm on, and that's okay. And I'm gonna clear that as far as what I think in that regard.
Well, as
and
a former prosecutor, I'll just say it disgusts me. As a former
Well, it should
product,
discuss. It
it
should discuss.
disgusts me.
It should discuss all of us, and it's this notion of comparing unlike things. So to say that commuting the sentences and pardoning people who of nonviolent, again, the key phrase here, nonviolent offenses versus people who attack the Capitol, injure police officers, et cetera, those are not comparing like things, and that's what people like to do. Well, Joe Biden pardoned these people and this, that, and so Trump ought to be. It's comparing two completely different things and trying to make them seem like they're similar, and those are the bad false equivalencies that we do far too much in this country. I don't have too much to add beyond what Fanon and Phil said, and I'll defer to them and their legal expertise on this because I'm not, never been a prosecutor, not an attorney. So they clearly have more expertise on this matter than I do. What I would say is, I think, it is important for people to look at and examine what the stories are behind these people and why their sentences, were commuted or they were pardoned, because the context and the details matter, right? It does matter in terms of how they reached the conclusions on these things. And we incarcerate more people in the United States than any other country. We incarcerate more of our citizens than any other country on the planet. And that in and of itself should say something to us about who we punish and the extent to which we punish people. That's not to say that you shouldn't face consequences for bad actions or things that you do. But as Phil said, some of these sentences are entirely too long. Some of the punishments are entirely too severe for the case of the argument. Mm-hmm. Punish people, yes, but let's be reasonable about what somebody should serve jail time for, and maybe what they need to be in rehabilitation, what they need to be in community service for. What are other ways that we make people pay a penalty for crimes that they pay that don't involve locking them up for nonviolent offenses and creating a mass incarceration or a mass jailing system that doesn't do anything to improve our society.
Historically, 5% of the world's population, 25% of the world's incarcerated population. The United States is 5% of the world's population, but constitutes 25% of those in the world that are incarcerated. Pretty outrageous. But we talk about justice, and justice is such an escapable, undefinable term, and it's subjective. And what's the more clear evidence of the subjectivity of the concept of justice than Trump saying, hey, I'm going to pardon these January 6th protesters. Now, we certainly have an issue with Trump, period. So we say, you know what, that's just him feeding to his base and placating the folks who were trying to overthrow the government. But somewhere in his mind, in his subjective mind, we can also argue that that's his concept of a just outcome. In the same way that Biden says these nonviolent offenses, these drug offenses, people got 25 years because the federal statutes require it. Justice to me says that's not right. And so the subjectivity of justice, and I saw this as a judge, I saw this as a prosecutor, I see it every day now, that from one person to another, from one incident to another, the idea of what is justice in a particular situation will vary as many colors as there are on the spectrum, and as many people who look at a picture and decide. But let me just offer this, and I apologize for speaking long. We better strap up, because if you all have been noticing, there have been congressional hearings about the January 6th participants. And this is going to lead up even more to a rallying cry from the next president or the incoming president to justify commuting or pardoning these folks. And that is, I don't know if folks have been hearing this, that is a quiet acknowledgement that there were some informants, there were some paid folks that were part of the January 6th protesters.
I think they've given up on that. Fanon, when
DOJ just put out a report saying that there were no FBI.
Exactly, there were no.
That didn't start it. That did not incite it.
There were none. There were none.
After
January 6th, the pro-Trump people, they came up with all kinds of crap. It was the FBI that did this, or it was. I remember Antifa. Remember that thing? That stupid thing. No, I mean, I actually think they've given up on all those things. And Nate just said, the Justice Department just came out with reports that there were no FBI people involved. There were a few. There were a few confidential.
And they were talking about the testimony where they acknowledged that they were part of the group embedded to provide information, but that they did not take any part in inciting.
Yeah, they were confidential. There were a few confidential.
Well, how did they get in? Where exactly were they? You know, when if they made it inside, did they go through a window, or were they in the lead? Were they in the third row or the second row? I mean, there were individuals who were embedded as part of that
confident. They weren't FBI people. They were informants.
They were informants.
Yes. And they should have had informants.
Exactly.
But to MAGA,
but
to MAGA, it doesn't make a difference. Like, you know, we got to understand the world we're living in. There's Earth 1 and Earth 2. We're here on Earth 1. There's an alternate universe that MAGA has created for themselves. So when Donald Trump said that it was a day of love, talking about January 6th, it was for them. And for
or that the 2020 election was rigged. Same thing.
That's how they look at it. And that's how they're going to continue to look at it no matter what. For them, it was a show of love for their country. For them, it was a show of love. It was patriotism. That's really what they believe. And there's nothing, no facts, no DOJ report, no podcast that's ever going to change that for them. That's the world we live on. But here's what people really need to understand. That would be one of the most gangster move ever if Donald Trump does, in fact, pardon or commute the sentences of those January 6ers.
He will.
That move alone will inspire loyalty and devotion and reverence and admiration
and violence as well, political violence.
If he does that, they will love him, and I think they're going to do it anyway. They will love him forever. They will love him forever in the MAGA movement once he makes that move. That will solidify the Trump dynasty in the minds of the MAGA folks. Now, I don't believe that, but I'm looking at them, I'm observing it, I'm studying it, and I'm telling you, once he makes that move, he will have people willing to die for him.
Absolutely.
Because what he's showing is, if you follow me,
I'll protect you.
I got your back.
He'll be man of the year 2025.
I got your back. It's the same thing with, and we've been talking about his cabinet positions. Look at what he's doing. He's picking loyalists. If you are loyal to me, I'll make you FBI director. If you are loyal to me, I'll give you a big time job in the government. And that will inspire a level of loyalty that we have never seen before in a president. People just liked Obama, thought he was a good guy. What Trump is building with MAGA is something way different, way different.
Yeah, that's nothing. It's no more than what he told you he was going to do. Like that. None of what you said, Nathan, has not anything that hasn't been in his playbook or what he said when he told you he told you he was going to pardon the January 6 people. That's not going to be a surprise. That's not going to be a great revelation. Why? Because that's what he said he was going to do.
No, I think
if you watch interviews coming into it. I remember watching, I think it was on 60 Minutes or something, they interviewed one of the ladies who was going to jail for being a part of January 6th. And she said, Donald Trump is going to get me out. When Donald Trump wins, he's going to get me out. I know he's going to get me out. Yeah. I'm not worried. Yeah, I hate to leave my family right now, but when he gets in, he's going to get me out. They all believe that. And if he does manage to deliver on that, it'll be no more than what he said, no more than what they expect. And you're absolutely right. It is going to engender in those folks a sense of loyalty, almost like I'll drink the Kool-Aid. You know, Jim, what was the guy's name?
Jim Jones.
Yeah. You know, they'll drink the Kool-Aid for him. They already swishing it around in their mouth. Now they'll be ready to swallow it for him.
To be willing to do anything for him. So like I keep telling people, this is something different. This ain't what it used to be. And yeah, all politicians lie and all that. This is something different. What MAGA is building is different. And people need to pay attention to it. They need to study it. They need to respect it for what it really is. It's not a game, and it's not going away.
What do we say when people tell you who they are, believe them? Perfect example. Again, none of this is a surprise. He said exactly what he was going to do when he was standing up at the podium.
The thing about Trump that's very shrewd, if you'll notice, things that would have gotten any president in trouble, especially if they said it behind closed doors, he is shrewd enough. He says the stuff out loud. Like, do you remember when he said, when he first ran, Russia, if you're listening, find those 30,000 emails. Well, he was in effect, he was engaging in trade activity of a
Talking over the
trader.
board, as they say in spades.
And what happened right after that? Russia did take the emails, and so forth. So that is his. Just like you guys were talking about the pardons. Yeah, his technique is he says outrageous, evil things, and so therefore nobody reacts the way they would if it was discovered by a newspaper, based on some secret conversation.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a new day. You know what? I forgot to put this on. I'm surprised nobody said anything. Kevin didn't say anything about it, but the biggest news story this week, of course, was the arrest of Luigi Mangione. He's the young man who is being held and potentially charged for the death of killing the United Healthcare CEO. And what's been so interesting about it is, in some circles, this man is now being looked upon as a hero. There are people online who are calling for blood of insurance company executives. To the point now where now the insurance company executives are responding. They're making comments in the media now, like, yeah, the American healthcare system has to change, and we got to fix our healthcare system. Like, wow, we are living in different times where you murder a man in cold blood, but because of the reasons that you did it, well, maybe we're not living in different times. Maybe that's America. We've always been that way. It's just a different time and maybe a slightly different circumstance. What is your take on what you're seeing right now in response to what this man did?
Well, Nathan, I would say this is no different than what we talked about on the last pod when we were talking about what sort of happened I don't think that anybody is saying that what he did, that going out committing cold-blooded murder is acceptable or is even a way to deal with disagreements, corruption,
I disagree with you.
Disaffectedness with a system. I'm speaking about. I'm not saying that there aren't pockets of people who might not support that. But what I'm saying is that in general, there are people who have been hurt and even killed or feel like that they have lost loved ones or maybe even suffered themselves through the business manipulations of the healthcare system. So there's not a lot of sympathy. There's not a lot of, feeling sorry for the industry because people's lives, people's finances, people's health has been ruined by some of the business practices of the healthcare industry. So I think that's what you're hearing expressed by people is not saying I'm okay with cold-blooded murder, but I think it's what it's saying is, hey, I don't feel sorry for y'all because what y'all are doing has destroyed a lot of people's lives and health, and this absolutely changes. And if this is what it took to get your attention and to spark some change, we're not condoning it, but we ain't mad at it either. And I think that's kind of what the sentiment of what we talked about last time. I think that's what a lot of people feel, that there's not a lot of sympathy out there. But I think that's different than saying people deserve to die or that we endorse cold-blooded murder. I see it may be a thin line, but I see a line of difference there.
Yeah, I think it's a thin line.
And when I said I disagree, you said, nobody's saying that this was appropriate or justified. And I disagree. I have been absolutely shocked with the stories, and I read the comments, particularly on the Instagram stories from HuffPost and New York Times and stuff like that. So when they post these stories, I go through and I skim through the 12,000 messages, whatever, the comments, and I have been absolutely shocked at the volume and the consistency of the acceptance of the rallying support. The man, that's right. And wait now that his family dies, now that maybe they'll understand. I mean, the vitriol. And then if we look and see how much money this dude is raising in his defense from all these people, these are small donors that are giving a lot of money to support and defend him. So I can't agree that it's a small pocket or nobody's saying that. I've been shocked at how many people, how many voices there are that are saying, yeah, that's what's up. That works. And I agree with this. I mean, it's been absolutely amazing. But you know, we've seen some movies over the past 30 years that have addressed kind of the, you know, outrageousness of the insurance industry and how callous it has been and the impact of it, because we're dealing with systems. In the same way we talk about the justice system, in the same way we talk about the education system, we're talking about, you know, healthcare system. Systems deal with people as numbers, as statistics. They don't look at the humanness, the individuality of people's lives when they're engaged in them. That's how the justice system justifies incarcerating all these people. That's how the healthcare system justifies turning folks down for healthcare when they know they have cancer or pre-existing. I mean, it's how they justify it, because if they looked at them as humans, if they looked at them as people, which is what I do when I'm standing in front of a jury, I'm humanizing an individual who society looks at as a statistic or as an anonymous face. If our systems did that, which is why our systems need to be revamped, then we wouldn't have these situations. But John Q, love that movie, Denzel Washington. That was an example of what's happening here. I want to say Rainmaker. I believe Rainmaker was one of the early John Grisham movies. I love that movie, and I think that's the one where there was a woman who was dying, or a young man who was dying, and the insurance companies had, you know, rejected his claim, and they found a piece of paper, and it ended up being a huge, and it may not have been Rainmaker, but that whole trial and you know, humanizing this person who the insurance company had said, well, you know, it's only a couple of dollars and stuff like that. I mean, we're not dealing with anything new, but I just have to reiterate, the response to this dynamic in such a violent way has been amazing, and how much it has been supported, how many voices of support, and the volume of individuals across ages and educational status that you've seen with these comments is pretty scary.
My opinion is consistent with Fanon's, and that's what I've been seeing as well. I've been thrown back a little bit and surprised by, and the word you use is perfect, vitriol. There are people primarily in the comment sections, but there's a lot of them who are outright calling for the heads of some of these other healthcare insurance companies, to the point where in New York, they had people putting up wanted signs. And the pictures and the people they're wanting are the heads of these insurance companies. So I don't know if these are bots. I don't know if these are international, you know, figures behind. I don't know what it is, but there is a huge, a lot of people who are like, not only do I not have sympathy for you, but you deserved it, and we coming for anybody else that does this to our people. And I think this goes back to a lot of people's dissatisfaction with insurance, which is very ironic, because some of these people voted for Trump, who is in favor of running our healthcare system like a business. And that's the problem that they have with the healthcare system in the first place, is that you're running it like a business instead of, you know, trying to make sure people get the most healthy outcomes as possible. So we are living in different times.
Absolutely, Nathan. And here's just a couple of points that I'll make. And maybe I'm a little bit more cynical and skeptical of chat rooms, message boards, social media, just because I know a lot about what goes into those. And you mentioned it, bots, foreign influences. So I don't put much stock in saying, oh, because of what I see in a chat or a message board or something, that's reflective of what the majority of people actually think or believe. I even make that argument in my own newsroom sometimes, that sometimes we give way too much stock to what we see in message boards and stuff like that as being reflective of what the larger community. I'm not saying that neither of you are right, but I'm saying I'm just a little bit more cynical and skeptical of that for those reasons, and not putting too much stock into it. There's a part of me that says, if that's true in a country that has as many guns and weapons out on the street as it does in terms of what people have, then we are much, much more closer to a civil altercation than we actually think. If you want to believe that
we are.
Guys, that many people have murderous instincts,
we are.
Then we are in deep.
Well, all you gotta do is look at the not so distant history of white frustration with black success to tell you that there's a murderous, bloodlusting instinct inside of a lot of European Americans. Let's keep it real, keep it 100. Let's look at the recent history.
Hey, look, as somebody said in the chat, mental health is real, right? And we know it doesn't take a whole bunch of people Just takes a handful of disturbed people or one disturbed person to get it set off. I'm not suggesting that that's not the case. The other point that I wanted to make was what you just said, Nathan, about running things like a business. And this was, I don't know if we're going to be able to get into this, but when you talked about, Trump's cabinet positions, a lot of them being occupied by billionaires.
Yeah.
One of the things that you often hear about people who run for office, right, or what the American people tend to respond for is when you have these business people who run for office and they're like, yeah, we need to get more politicians in there who run businesses. A lot of these politicians don't know what it's like to run businesses, and we need more business people running our government because our government is a business, right? But that resonates with a lot of American voters, and they're just like, yeah, you know what, that makes sense. The government is like a business, and we should have these but here's the thing, you just pointed it out, is that when you run government and when you run institutions like our healthcare industry like a business, people get treated like a bottom line digit, not like actual people or, human beings. And we all complain about if you've ever been laid off around this time of year from your job, the first thing that you say is not, boy, I'm glad they run this corporation like a business. They don't give a damn about me as a person, right? Business is all good until you're a victim of business, right? And that is the thing that, people got to get smart about, because these billionaires, that's exactly how they're talking about doing it. They're talking about running it as a business that's going to benefit them. There are all sorts of ethical conflicts of interest with a lot of these people, starting with Elon Musk, who Trump has put there. And they're going to do things that are going to benefit them, not the average American. And what I love about people who support Donald Trump is they're like, oh, well, Trump is going to come in and he's going to drain the swamp. Really? Putting a whole bunch of billionaires who got conflicts and who are going to benefit running the government, that's draining the swamp? That's not draining the swamp. All they're doing is replacing alligators with crocodiles. And you know what the sad point is a lot of people don't know the difference between an alligator and a crocodile until they get bit.
That's a real excellent point. I like that. Yeah. Spot on for sure. I'm with you on all of that. But just so everybody, Fanon had to leave. Really appreciate that, brother, man. Super strong mental. Appreciate his contribution to the show. He's busy. I get it. Thank you so much, Fanon. Really appreciate you, bro. Yeah, I don't have anything to add or rebuttal or push back on anything that you said. We're living in different times. Things are changing in front of us, and we need to realize that. And I'm not saying that we need to do, well, I am saying there's some things we need to do radically. Some things there's more subtle changes that we need to be addressing, but things are different because on one hand, as it relates to Luigi and the killing of this CEO, which I get people's frustration. My grandmother, I had to deal with and watch what it's like to get denied by an insurance claim. And here we are living paycheck to paycheck and really giving retirement check to retirement check. So I understand that frustration. I've dealt with back pain. I took a nasty fall. I was going out to do like a second job, put food on the table for my family. So I just took it for what it was. Took a nasty fall that could have took me out the game. So I can understand just how debilitating back pain could be. And if they hit that nerve, sciatica, man, you're talking about a whole different reality. So there are people out there living in pain will drive you crazy, depending on the nature of your pain. So I get it. But what I saw with that CEO was dead wrong. I understand the man has his issues, but to murder someone like that and to see the callousness that people are doing online, I hope that it doesn't spill over to the real world. And, and all we can do is hope and pray it doesn't. But it's interesting because on one hand, you've got this anti-establishment sort of movement, for lack of a better word, as it relates to the healthcare insurance companies and who's running them and how they're running them. And then you've got the incoming Trump administration, which is a cabinet full of elitists. So it'll be interesting on some levels to see how that meshes and how that works out. Because people are clearly saying enough is enough. But at the same time, they voted for a lot more of it. So let's see how this plays out.
But that just goes to show you the depths of the hatred that exists in the political parties, in the politics. Because how many times have you seen it? People are like, I hate Obamacare, but I love the Affordable Care Act. but they're the same thing, you know. But it's the hatred of the Democrats and the Obama portion of that, Obamacare, the liberals, the Dems, even though the people
That
who
black woman.
even though the people who are a lot of MAGA supporters and people who support Trump benefit from it, and he's talking about cutting it, getting rid of it, you know, with no discernible replacement program, and the people who support him are going to be the ones who are hurt most by that. But they care more about it's the politics of it and how it's presented that, you know, they don't even get it, right? I think some of them don't even get it, and when you try to explain it to them, like, yeah, that's like that insurance that you got, that is Obamacare, that is the affordable health care. They don't even want to believe it when you when you confront them with the facts of it. That's how deep the political hatred is in some corners of this country, that
but not just that.
You cannot accept facts.
All on point, but I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, bro.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, all on point. I would just add, it's not just the resentment, but it's also how media, right? Fox media, right-wing media, that echo chamber that they have created is very influential. So it's so influential that they got people thinking that Obamacare, because it starts with Obama's name, it's not the same as ACA, right? And they don't even know, because they're caught in this media echo chamber where they're being told the same thing over and over again. And there's no divergent point of view, right, that challenges that. So they go with it. And that's how you can lead people to vote against their own best interest. They don't think they're voting against their own best interest. They think they're voting for their interest, but they're stuck in a media echo chamber. And it's very hard to get people out of that kind of thing, as I'm learning more and more every single day. With my good buddy Michael, my good buddy Michael there, he said replacing alligators with pythons. Yeah. Brenda writes, I have sciatica and the pain is unbearable. I have a little bit of it, and it'll make you want to do whatever you got to do to make the pain go away. And I do mean almost whatever you got to do. It's a different kind of pain. So I don't wish that on anybody.
Do you guys remember when Obamacare was proposed, and they had all these public meetings attacking it? And I'll never forget the guy who had the sign that said, keep your government hands off my Medicare. You remember that?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you talk about the level of I'm sorry, Bill. I have to agree with Bill Maher of how frankly stupid this country is. But you know, I think that was sort of typical of people's knowledge. And you'll notice, though, as much Trump, there was how many votes went through the Congress trying to abolish Obamacare. But you'll notice something. You don't hear that
John
anymore.
McCain.
John McCain saved it. I almost wish McCain hadn't saved it, and then they would realize that we have no health care. They had no plan. They still don't have a plan. And the truth of the matter is, the reason nobody in my party now, I don't hear anybody saying, let's get rid of Obamacare, because the fact is, I think that program has been one of the greatest ever enacted in history.
Well,
the millions of people who didn't have insurance, and I know a bunch of those people, and you guys do too. I mean, it was a hell of a great program. Let's face it. I don't know what else to say. No, it was really, really worked.
Yeah, you're right. A lot of Republicans know that, particularly in their areas, that it will hurt their constituency. And that's why you don't hear them. That's why you don't hear anybody outside of Donald Trump and you know, some of those people, you know, JD Vance and you know, some of the more far right wing members of the party even talking about the
I don't hear them. I don't hear them saying to get even those guys. You know, Trump, of course, told this ridiculous lie during the campaign that Obamacare was really bad, but I saved it. I mean, he tried to kill it time after time.
They were one vote from killing it. It was John McCain who saved it. I watched it, as I'm sure many millions of Americans watched it as well. Just one, exactly. John McCain. You know, there's a lot of his policies in his history I did not agree with. But I respected the man for a couple of moments. That moment, and there was a moment during the debate when a white woman stood up and she's like, I don't trust Obama. He's a terrorist. And she said, no, ma'am, he's a good man. We just disagree on policy.
Right.
Yeah.
That's it. That would never happen. Or something. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that would
I
never
agree.
happen today. If a Republican candidate did that today, he would be primary.
Yep, he would be primary. He or she would be
Yeah.
primary, absolutely, and that's
Let
very,
me
very
let me
sad.
share one thing that sort of relates to this. I worked pretty closely with Tim Ryan, who ran against Vance. You remember in 2022,
Yep.
and who I kind of headed up the Republicans for Ryan thing in that year. We did a lot of meetings and events and stuff. But one thing sticks out in my mind. I kind of feel this somehow relates. I don't know if you remember, but the night that he lost to Vance, he stood up and he said, I get to accept one of the greatest privileges that our system allows. And he said, I am conceding this to Vance. And, you know, that to me, I know it's a Democrat and all, but I thought he made such a great point there, you know, that he was saying this is the right way to do it like that, which, as you guys say, unfortunately, is pretty much absent in my party.
Yeah, well, again, what I say is, and it's sad that we start calling out and applauding things that should be the way that things should be done. Like, it's like now we're holding up as like this model of virtue, things that used to just be, that was just the way that it was. You lost an election, you conceded it. Now it's viewed as a virtue. Like that's a sad indictment on where we've come as a country, as things that should just be the way that they are as a matter of course, as a matter of statesmanship and good faith politics is no longer what's at play. And so now we got to call this stuff out and celebrate it because it's no longer the norm. And I think that is, more of an indictment kind of on where we are and what the new standards that we are accepting, that the broader country is accepting. And there are a lot of different reasons for that. I think I have my own thoughts and philosophies about the Ohio Democratic Party and just the national Democrats in general in terms of how they've just pretty much seeded Ohio. I'm not sure Tim Ryan lost to J.D. Vance because J.D. Vance was better or that he spoke more to, the people's ideas of Ohio. The Democratic Party didn't invest money in Tim Ryan's race here in Ohio to the extent that they could have to give him a shot to win that, and I think that, the Democratic Party in Ohio at large has just not been up to snuff, has not been, producing the caliber of candidates. So it's like, I think there's this notion that Ohio is now a red state. I think it's a red state as much because of the failures of the party as it is, the changing values or thoughts of people in Ohio and the amount the party invested in the candidates there. When you had a good candidate in Tim Ryan, you didn't spend money on him, and because J.D. Vance was ripe to be beaten. J.D. Vance was not a superior candidate. He was ripe to be beaten.
You're saying that the Democrats, Senate Democrat committee didn't spend any money on Tim Ryan? I do remember there being a conversation about more money.
I said enough.
Oh,
I didn't say they didn't spend any money. And Tim Ryan, I think, would even tell you that if you talk to him, that
I think there was a conversation about it. I do remember it. I just don't remember what the numbers are. So if we're judging enough by the outcome and he lost, then obviously you're right about that. I just don't remember. I remember there being a conversation, and there were like people saying, "Hey, Ohio Senate Democrats put more money into Tim Ryan," but I don't think it's about.
If I'm not mistaken, David Pepper. I mean, I don't want to. And again, David, if you're watching or anybody associated with David Pepper is watching it, and I'm misconstruing this, correct me or forgive me for putting the wrong information out there. But I believe David Pepper was on record with his disappointment.
Yeah, I think you're right.
The National Democratic Party didn't spend more money in Ohio.
Yeah,
maybe every Democratic Party chair in every state says that when the Democrats don't spend money in their state. Maybe they say that. I don't know. But
yeah, that's ringing some bells. Once you said David Pepper, that starts to ring a few bells. I think he was on Twitter or something like that. And he might give some interviews, MSNBC talking about it. So yeah, that seems the same. I still don't know what the amount of money was spent. I don't think it's about caliber of the candidate. I just think it's about time and effort, right? Like you said earlier, Kevin, it seems like the Democrats have just succeeded, just giving up on Ohio. And I'm like, man, there's work to do and there's votes to be earned. But you got to do it 24/7, not just election cycle. It's got to be all the time. But There's way smarter people to get paid to strategize for the Democrats than me. So I'll let them do that. So
I'd like to follow up real quick, if I could,
sure.
on just something that I think, Nathan, you or one or more of you guys have brought up today.
Okay.
Which is, I think you said it's a new day. It's a new day. And I think the reflection, and I see it as a new day in the risk to our democracy. You may see it in other ways, but I think what reflects the concern is more than anything, and you guys have mentioned this, is the people that Trump has put up to head these different departments. I actually believe that he's testing his party, for one thing. Look, he could have gotten a loyalist, but who had at least a legitimate background as FBI director, someone who you could point to and say he's experienced. Same with Hegseth, that drunken whatever, Hegseth, whatever. I mean,
he'll probably end up being Sec Def.
What's that?
He'll probably end up being the new Secretary of Defense.
Yeah. Trump could have found somebody that had some Michael Flynn type, a crazy, but he's at least experienced. But I believe that he put such outrageous people up that, first of all, he's telling us, I am taking over the Justice Department. I am taking over the FBI. And he's basically challenging. He's in effect saying, I control the Republican Party because none of these guys have the guts to vote against me. And those appointments, to me, just confirm what I think many of us have feared, which is that we are really at risk of losing our freedoms.
Yeah, I think Donald Trump is a hammer, and to a hammer, everything is a nail. And so when you're always making aggressive moves and people are reacting, sometimes their reaction gives you an opportunity to do some research or to just scope out the scene. And it's kind of like a happy circumstance. I don't think that Donald Trump is testing anything. He wants Pete Hegseth for whatever reasons why he wants Pete Hegseth. And it's actually brilliant on one hand because it goes back to inspiring loyalty. If you're on Fox News right now, you are loyal to one man, Donald Trump. Why? Because he might watch you on TV. So every night it's a performance for once, right? So he's inspiring loyalty in terms of their performance while they're in front of the camera. But then too, everybody's hoping to be the next Pete Hegseth. Hey, if I keep saying the right things, Donald Trump might make me the next Secretary of Defense or the Secretary of the Navy or whoever it might be. So, I mean, it's a real gangster move on a lot of different levels. But I think Donald Trump is just doing what he wants. I want Pete. That's it. Think what you want to think about it. Whatever you got to do to make it happen. I want Pete, as he's always been throughout his whole life.
And we're seeing this in the judiciary too, which is very scary. This Judge Eileen Cannon, who was barely out of law school, okay? It was very clear. I mean, I could just say as an attorney, and I think I'm backed up by most prominent legal minds in this country, her actions in that case were so over the line. And especially when she dismissed it. I mean, it was going to be, everything was being successfully appealed, and that would have been too. But what is she doing? I'll tell you what, she's also auditioning. She's auditioning for a Court of Appeals appointment because she knows that if she plays the Trump game, guess what? When that Court of Appeals comes up, he's going to move her up. He doesn't care the fact she's never even tried a case in her life. He doesn't care.
But if you're Donald Trump, Phil, it makes perfect sense. She's already shown you, like you said in the documents case, that she's willing to deal with the ire of her professionals. She's willing to be isolated, to be criticized in the media, for people to point fingers at her for him. And that's exactly the kind of person, if you're Donald Trump, that he seems to want.
Yeah.
So can we just put to bed? I really hope we can, as a country and a nation. I don't want to hear anybody, especially if you're a Trump supporter or you're on that side. Can we just bury the phrase "best person for the job, most qualified person"?
I'm not going to bury that.
Let me finish, Phil. Let me finish, Phil. Let me just finish, Phil. Let me finish my thought here. Can we just bury this? Can we just bury this term? Can we just bury that phraseology and that term?
No.
Let's have a eulogy for it. We can mourn it. We can all get around the grave. We can cry. I'll bring the Kleenex. And let's just bury that terminology and recognize it for the farce that it is, because certainly Donald Trump is thumbing his nose at that concept right now with these cabinet appointments. And he did it last time around as well in certain areas. can we just stop pretending like that's really a thing? That like people are not hooking up their friends and their partners, and that it's not what you know, that it's who you know, and
just the opposite. This is the time.
That's how a whole lot of people
just
get
the
ahead
opposite
in this world, and that there are way more DEI hires that are not minorities than that are minorities.
You're talking about two different situations.
I would feel a whole lot better if we could just
let me tell you why that's exactly what we ought to be saying now, because he's putting incompetent, forget the fact that they're drunks or they're whoremongers, he's putting incompetent people who are not the best person for the job. And I'll give you a great example. Christopher Wray, as we know, was appointed by Donald Trump. Okay, when he was before he kind of, found out that you don't want to have honest, decent, fair-minded people. Before he learned that, Christopher Wray did exactly what he should have done. He went after Trump when he should have. He executed that office with excellence. Okay, he was the best man for the job, or certainly one of the best. Now, the guy who's being put, he's fired because he was the best and he was a true patriot. Now they're putting in a guy who is not the best man for the job. So on the contrary, Kevin, that's the last thing we ought to bury, because that is what we ought to be demanding. And I know you're reacting to the stuff where some black guy or some woman, and people say, well, he's not the best for the job. Well, I'll respectively say it can happen to people who are black, happen to people who are women, and can happen, as we see here, to white people. Okay, but that's exactly the phrase we ought to keep our eyes on, because it's why these people he's hiring are so incompetent.
Yeah, but let me push back just a little bit. These people that
on
Donald
Kevin,
Trump,
I hope you mean.
No, on you, Phil.
These
people that Donald Trump is putting in his cabinet are competent. They are very competent.
No,
they are.
Not at the job. Not at that job.
They are competent at that job. They are competent at the job that Donald Trump wants them to do. Number one, loyalty to Donald Trump. Do what I tell you to do when I tell you to do it. And number two, help me destroy federal protections for everyday working class people. That is their job. They are very competent for that. And it amounts for a big L for everybody else. They are very competent for what he wants them to do. Now, if you want,
but the term "best man for the job" is always used to apply not to what
you're thinking. You're on Earth one with us, thinking about
the best man for the job is supposed
to
to
where
apply.
We are right now, Phil.
As Kevin brought it up, it's supposed to apply to the job to which the person's being appointed.
In Donald Trump's world, your competency is: are you going to do what I tell you to do when I tell you to do it? I don't care if it's unethical. I don't care if it's illegal. I don't care if the media talks about you. Do what I told you to do. Our job is to go to the federal government, deconstruct everything, deregulate everything, take away federal protections for working class people, for non-white people. That is the job. They are uniquely qualified for that because many of them are billionaires, so they will be insulated by their money, by the effects of it. They are perfect for the job that he wants them to do.
Okay, I agree, but that's not what we're referring
to. Phil is talking in theory.
I know.
And I agree with Phil. I agree with Phil in theory. But I don't.
Is this on tape? Is this on?
But here, I don't live in theory. I live in reality. And so my comment on that is that the same people who are offended by Ketanji Brown Jackson being put on the Supreme Court, by Kamala Harris, who Joe Biden made vice president, who were even offended by Kamala Harris running for president, those same folks have zero to say about Trump's cabinet appointment. And that's my point about burying this notion of best man or woman for the job. Burying that, I'm not saying bury it in theory. I'm saying bury it because people are full of crap and full of hypocrisy.
Of course.
Because they want to, it's the best man for the job when they like the person.
When they like
when it's on their side. But when it's somebody they don't like or don't agree with, they're unqualified. They only got it because of this, that, or the other. Yeah. Man, miss me with that. And that's why I say bury it and kill it.
Yeah, I'm with you. And again, I understand the point that you were making, Phil, but I wanted to make that point as well. Trump is not appointing these people just on a lark. these are the people he wants. They're going to execute his plan, and I don't think his plan is good for working class Americans or non-white folks in general. I just don't believe it at all. But Nicole says, best man or woman. That's right. Best man or woman. Thank you for the correction. Michael writes, he doesn't have the power to do away with those laws. He's doing away with bureaucracy. Mm-hmm. Okay, Michael, I hear you. I hear you, bro. Well, listen, guys, this has been a great conversation. I really appreciate your time. As we always do near the end, is there anything that was missed or a point that you forgot to make, or did somebody say something you want to circle back around? Speak now or forever hold your peace.
Well, I would say one thing we didn't get into, it was a good topic that you sent to us that we didn't really get into was
save it then.
Was okay. It's so good. I just don't know if it'll be relevant when we come back around to do it the next time. But
hopefully it will be, and hopefully we can get a little bit more friction on it, a little more contrast.
Okay. All right. I'll save it. I won't.
Yeah, I think I know what you're talking about, bro. But I'm with you 100%. I'm just trying to manage the show here. Phil, anything on your mind, sir?
No, not at all.
Yeah, I thought we had a good conversation. To all the people here, if you like this show, please lift us up and tell people about the podcast. We typically stream live on Facebook, on YouTube on Tuesdays and Fridays at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So you're always welcome to join in. If you've got any topics you want to send my way, or maybe you want to send it to Kevin, great. Send it to us, and we'll check them out. If you got maybe a suggestion for a crew member, somebody who might be perfect, please let us know. And who knows, they might show up on a future episode of the Hot Mic Podcast. All right, everybody, have a great rest of your Friday and a great weekend. Hope the best for everybody. Who Day, we're looking for another Bengal win this weekend. Is that right? Are they playing?
Right. Tennessee.
Yeah, Tennessee. Yeah. Oh, okay. We should get them.
Old Bengals OC is the head coach of the Titans. So Tyler Boyd is on the Titans. So a lot of old Bengals connections. This Chidobe Awuzie, the cornerback that used to be with. There are a lot of former Bengals that are on that team. So it'll be a lot of good little storylines. And T. Higgins looked like he could be coming back to Cincinnati. You saw he dumped his agent. Everybody said that Bengals couldn't make that happen. It's looking like something is not set in stone, but it's looking like some of the dominoes are setting up that could be possible. Bengals could retain his services. Not looking good for this year. Fleeting hope, but still some good news in light of all the bad news.
And hopefully some good football. We're watching the best wide receiver QB tandem, I think, this year on the Bengals.
Without question.
Without question, man. With Burrow and Chase. So, enjoy the games. We got a win in Dallas. Hey, you were in Dallas, man. We haven't even talked since then, Kevin. How was the trip, bro?
Man, the Dallas trip was great, man. Cincinnati represented strong down there, man. There were a lot of Bengals fans down in Dallas last weekend. I'm just going to tell you, and between all of the tailgates and then just seeing a lot of the orange and black in the stadium there, I said who they more this weekend, I think, than I've said probably all year. I told my wife, I said, you know what? I love who they, but I'm tired of saying who they because everywhere you went, there was a Bengals fan. Who they. It was awesome. It was great. It was just great.
How does that stadium look?
Oh man, listen, I can't remember whether I said this on the last pod, but I went to SoFi Stadium about 3 weeks ago. I said then, that stadium made, our little Paycor stadium look like a homeless shelter, pretty much. I mean, it was there's no diss to homeless shelters, but I'm just saying, but comparatively, I get why if you're the Bengals, we need some upgrades because there's really no comparison between places like SoFi and AT&T Stadium to what we have here in Cincinnati. I mean, Dallas' stadium is just ridiculous. I mean, even the walk up to the stadium where they almost had like a full-length football field where the Dallas cheerleaders come out and they perform before the game on this little faux football field, and they've got almost as many concession stands before you even get into the stadium as you got in the stadium. A huge grocery store, almost as big as a grocery store, cooler of beer which you can buy out. I mean, it's ridiculous, man. I mean, it's
since we're on sports, I just got to ask. Or I'll ask. You know how much I respect the opinions of you astute gentlemen. So, who are you picking in the UC Xavier basketball game, which I think is in about 2 days?
Oh, UC, man. As a UC grad, I mean, come on. UC all day.
Yeah.
Go
My
Bearcats.
wife is a Xavier fan or a Xavier grad, so
What?
I'm kind of obligated. I'm obligated to say Xavier. I don't, and this could be blasphemy to say this.
Don't say you don't care, Kevin. Don't say you don't care.
I don't. I really don't. I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan of either UC or Xavier.
What?
Yeah, I'm not. I mean, I was a Georgetown fan growing up. I love Patrick Ewing, John Thompson. Like that was the era that I grew up in when Georgetown was good. And then Allen Iverson was one of my favorite basketball players. So I'm a Georgetown fan at heart. So I've never really had any connection to the local teams when it came to college basketball.
I understand. That's fair. That's fair.
Nobody asked, but I'll give you my brief Xavier UC history. I used to be, I still like UC football. I was a huge UC basketball fan. I used to go around whatever metro tournament. I'd go around to all the games and this and that. I'd go down when they were in Louisville. When I remember, what's his name who scored 38 points that game? Roger, he was incredible scorer. I'll think of his name in a minute. But I'll tell you what happened. When Bob Huggins took over that team, I lost interest because I thought the guy, I thought the guy was just a nasty guy. I knew some people who knew him. I just thought he was a really bad guy, and he brought in players that, frankly, a lot of them were just a bunch of thugs. And from there, I now have become a much stronger Xavier fan. So, not that anybody cares, but that's kind of my basketball history.
As long as you don't say that Kenyon Martin's a thug, we're all good. You're not talking about Kenyon Martin.
Who?
You're not talking about Kenyon Martin, though, are you?
Oh, no, I'm talking about the Art, whatever his name.
Art Long?
Art. There's a bunch of those guys.
My guys,
the
right
early
there.
Bob Huggins, the early
there
Bob
was a
Huggins
joke.
Bearcats teams were, Nick Van Exel.
I went to the Final Four that year when they went. I know. No, I was
Terry Nelson.
Terry Nelson's a great guy who I know.
Yeah, I mean that
stuff.
That early iteration of the UC Bearcats when Huggins first got there and they made the Final Four and went to prominence, that was good. He kind of lost his way on down the line, I think, a little bit in terms of his behavior, and I think
he lost his way behind the wheel a couple times. I will share one. I'll share one quick little anecdote because it sticks out of my mind. He had remember a guy on his team years ago called Lewis Banks? Okay, you go. Anyway, he got charged with like attempted rape or something like this. Okay. And there was a couple of guys of the prosecutors, and he was not a strong free throw shooter. Okay. So one of the guys in the prosecutor's office says to me, he goes, you know what they ought to do? They ought to just agree to stipulate, just put Lou at the line, okay? And if you sink two, you're not guilty. But if you miss, you're going away. I thought that was a classic.
I can't tell whether T. Nicole is being serious or not about Bob Huggins. Oh, I see my wife is in the chat. She talking about Xavier all day.
That's
there
right. Represent, wifey. Represent. That's right.
No, thank you.
Don't answer wrong, Kevin, because you know what that means.
Thank you, Mrs. Aldridge. I want to thank you for that. Thank you very much.
I told you I had to say Xavier, even if I don't mean it.
That's a good hubby. You already know. Because you listen. Hey, listen, this has been a lot of fun. I really appreciate the conversation. Again, have a great Friday, a great weekend, and we're planning to be back with you next week. Again, we air live on Tuesdays and Fridays at 1 p.m. So thank you for being everybody. Thank you to the crew, and we'll talk with you real soon.